What is barometric pressure and how do pilots use it to determine their altitude above sea level or above a field? Well, by the end of this video, you will have a good understanding of that, as well as what standard pressure is and the most common types of altimeter settings from QNE to QFE and QNH. Hello, everyone. My name is Steve, the Wired Flyer, and I try to break down aviation concepts in the simplest way possible. And in today's video, it's all about barometric pressure. So let's not waste any more time and dive in. What is barometric pressure? Well, it's the weight of the air molecules being pulled down due to gravity. So we don't really feel it, but at all times there are air molecules pushing down on everything. There are two main factors that affect barometric pressure. And those two factors are temperature and altitude. Let's first talk about the temperature and how it plays an effect. Basically, the warmer that the air is, the more energized the air molecules will be. And they will start bouncing around off of each other. And that creates separation in the air molecules. So for a given amount of space, if the air is quite warm, there will be less air molecules than in a cold temperature setting. So during a cold temperature setting, they have less energy and they're more still, so they are more compact together. Therefore, cold air will be more dense than hot air because there are more air molecules in the same given amount of space. The other factor that affects barometric pressure or air density is your altitude. So you got to think that gravity is pushing down all of these air molecules. So the lower you are, the closer you are to sea level, then the more pressure there is, and therefore the more air molecules there are. So the higher that you go, the less dense the air is and the lower the barometric pressure. Typically, barometric pressure is measured in mercury, and the chemical compound for that is Hg. Mercury, or Hg's Latin translation is liquid silver. A common pressure brought up in aviation is standard pressure. Now, what is it? Well, basically, there was a scientist a long time ago who found out that 29.92 inches of mercury was the atmospheric pressure at sea level on an average day. Now, let's break that down a little bit more so we have a better understanding of it. So, standard pressure is like a global reference point used in aviation, but it's not always correct because it's based on idealized conditions, and those perfect conditions would be 15 degrees Celsius, sea level being the exact same, and no weather patterns. But in the real world, these are all things that are constantly changing. Therefore, standard pressure is not always accurate. In fact, it rarely is. Now let's look at some of the common altimeter settings, and one of them would be the standard pressure, which is 29.92. Now, the acronym used for it is QNE. And I like to memorize this by normal elevation. Standard pressure, 2992 inches of mercury, is what pilots use and set on their altimeter when they reach the transition point, which is 18,000 feet. That way, everyone flying is using the exact same reference point. Then there's QFE, and how I memorize that is the F and the E represent field elevation, and QFE would be the pressure of the local airport you're at. So at the ground at the airport, your altimeter, if it's set to QFE, then your altimeter will read 0. And this is rarely used in North America. Then there is QNH, which is the local sea level pressure. So the N and the H represent nautical height, and that's how I memorize QNH. QNH represents the local atmospheric pressure accounted for sea level. So let's just say you're at Vancouver YVR Airport and you're 15 feet above sea level. Well, when you're set to QNH on your altimeter, then your altimeter should read 15 feet above sea level. Now let's break down the altimeter, what it is, and how it works. The altimeter is essentially a barometer measuring the atmospheric pressure and mechanically showing us on a scale measured in feet how high we are. So the altimeter has a little dial on it, and you can adjust that setting. And when you adjust that setting, it's changing the baseline that you're measuring your height above. So you could be measuring from the standard pressure, which is QNE, or you could be measuring off of QNH or QFE. Now, what happens if you put the wrong setting on the Colesman window, which is that little adjusting dial that you can change on the altimeter. Well, if you put the wrong setting in, then you will be reading the wrong height. And there's a general rule of thumb that every 1 inch of mercury that the dial is set incorrectly to, let's just say you set the altimeter to 28 inches of mercury when it's supposed to be 29 inches of mercury, the altimeter will be 1,000 feet off, roughly. So if you leave an airport and your altimeter was set to the sea level, but you forget to adjust it to QNH, then along your flight, you could easily be about 1,000 feet off from having a correct reading, which could lead to airspace violations and even terrain collisions. So anyways, that's it for this one, guys. Hopefully you have a better understanding of barometric pressure and how pilots use it. I would recommend checking out this video right here on the 6 types of altitude if you want to keep learning and do a deeper dive. My name's Steve, the Wired Flyer, and please subscribe to the channel to join me on my journey from journeyman electrician to pilot at 30 years old. And before I let you go, keep learning, stay motivated, and chase your dreams. Let's go.